Hey guys. I said I was going to do do this about a week or two ago, and I'm sorry it's been delayed. We obviously had that ridiculous fee filing from Blake Lively, and there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages to go through. Even though she was kind of asked to limit it, she did not. Um, I'm gonna do a short PowerPoint on some of the strengths and weaknesses, possible defenses against each of the defendants. I'm going to start with Sony because they are the strongest defendant, and then I'm going to kind of go down the scale at the current newly added defendants and possible future defendants who I think could and should be added. So, okay, strengths and weaknesses of Henson's claim against Sony Music Entertainment. Lost my voice then. This is obviously in the lawsuit involving the Bye 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 dance. So, Sony are the central defendant, and I think that their exposure exceeds that of every other co-defendant, including Epic Games, including Marvel. I keep calling them Marvel because it's easier. It's like a subsidiary of Marvel, basically, like an offshoot of Marvel, and the company is called Richmond Street Productions. Richmond Street Productions is basically, if you think Wayfarer Studios produced It Ends With Us movie, but they set up It Ends With Us movie LLC as like the dedicated LLC for the production of the movie. Richmond Street Productions is the dedicated LLC for the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. Likely so called because of the location of where the movie was shot, which was in London, Richmond, I think it was, which is just outside of London in that area. It's in Surrey, it is, which is, a short train to London to give context for anyone who doesn't live in the UK. Also, Lance Bass and Nick Pawley, who was the dancer. So Nick Pawley was the dancer in Deadpool and Wolverine. Lance Bass, I'm sure nearly everyone will know this, was one of the members of NSYNC. Sony sits at the origin of the entire alleged infringement chain. Now, remember I said this is not just that, hey, you used my stuff and you didn't have permission, give me damages. This is a licensing agreement claim. Okay, Sony have been basically licensing this dance, and so far, it's proven that they have no right, in my opinion, because, well, firstly, Darren Henson actually holds the copyright for his own dance. Secondly, since 1999, when he put the dance together, it has not been disputed that he is the choreographer of the dance. Um, Now I'm going to just actually make my point here, right? With one of Nick Pawley's own Instagram posts, which is playing the NSYNC music. And last time I think I used Darren Henson's own dance grooves clip where he choreographs the dance, and he's got the NSYNC music playing alongside it. And even though I had muted it, I completely muted the music because I didn't want anyone to. The music's not important, right? This dance is so iconic. You could watch someone perform it without any music and you would know which song it belonged to. That is the textbook definition of being iconic, right? But I had no music actually playing, but I still got a copyright strike, which I did successfully argue against it. But yeah, that was just wild. I'm going to show you this post just to make my point on kind of like who actually is known for this dance, because even Nick Pawley, if I remove this, add this to the stage, in this post here, he says thanks Ryan Reynolds for believing in him to play dance pool. I'll get back to that in a separate video. It is the greatest honor of my life. Hashtag Deadpool Wolverine, bye bye bye, music video choreography. And then, who does he credit? Darren Henson. If I click this, I'm going to Darren Henson's Instagram page. So that is the, where is it? No. Stop. I'm just going to play the music. I'm going to get struck again. So that was just after he filmed the, that was not too long after. It has been edited. Now, I don't know whether he has added that since because he has been slapped with a lawsuit. I don't know. But, yeah. So, Nick Pauly himself has credited Darren Henson with, the dance, basically. So I just wanted to kind of make that point. And so he should, because he is a choreographer. He knows this. He knows it's not his dance. Now, there are other posts which kind of go on and where he seems to act like it's his dance. But, I'll come to that when I come to his video. Likewise, I will come to all of the thanking Ryan Reynolds when I come to the video about Ryan Reynolds. Okay, so Sony. So Sony initiated the chain. They licensed the choreography that it did not own to multiple downstream parties, including Marvel, including Epic Games, who they are behind Fortnite, the game Fortnite. So allegedly these licenses that Sony issued are invalid. And then they also profited directly through the licensing revenue from rights that it did not hold, making its profits directly traceable and recoverable. And then finally, Sony allegedly, I have to say allegedly, misrepresented its ownership to multiple licensees and failed to locate any work for hire agreement after 2 years of searching. Can I just say, though, when I was talking about getting a copyright strike for using Darren Henson's video, a clip of his video demonstrating the dance, which has the song in it, Sony, in the height of ridiculousness, they actually, jumped on that and copyright striked me, claiming ownership. So they're still doing it. Rightfully so, they do own the song, but the song was muted. So that is why I won my copyright strike and it was lifted, because there wasn't actually any music. Literally the only thing you could see was Darren Henson doing his own fucking dance. And YouTube agreed. So, yeah, Sony is the core liability engine of this case. Every downstream infringement traces directly back to Sony's conduct, and that is why they are the strongest defendant here. So the core allegation is that Sony licensed what it did not own. And the amended complaint is unambiguous about this. And it's, as a quote, each time a defendant made use of the work pursuant to a license from SME, Henson's copyright was infringed. This is the strongest possible infringement theory available in copyright law. And there are different types of infringement. So we've got direct infringement, right, which is the unauthorized reproduction and distribution through the act of licensing itself. Sony placed infringing copies into the stream of commerce, right, by licensing directly to Marvel and to Epic Games. And there may be others that we are not aware of right now, but so far these are the defendants that Darren Henson is currently suing. Contributory infringement. So what that means is Sony knowingly enabled third parties to infringe Henson's copyright by granting licenses that carried no lawful authority. Vicarious infringement. Sony profited directly from the infringement whilst retaining the ability and obligation to prevent it. And then willful infringement. So if Sony knew it lacked rights yet continued licensing, willfulness dramatically amplifies statutory damages exposure. And that is under United States Code 17. That's section 504, subsection C2. So there are 5 pillars on why this claim is extremely strong. Firstly, there is no work for hire agreement that Sony can't find it. They've had 2 years to look, around 2 years, and they have not been able to find a work for hire agreement. So therefore, under United States Code 17, Section 101, without a written instrument signed by both parties, Sony cannot claim ownership and therefore cannot license the choreography. That would then mean that every license it issue is invalid. Motion picture registrations do not cover choreography. The Copyright Office Circular 45 is clear. Motion picture registrations protect only the audiovisual expression, not underlying choreographic works. So Zomba's registrations, there were 2 registrations from Zomba, who were Sony's predecessor. They confer no rights over the choreography. They are limited to the music itself and the music video. So if you remember, it was Henson being chased by a crazy woman with a pair of dogs. That is kind of the limit of it. It does not cover the dance. 3, Sony caused all downstream infringement. So by licensing to Richmond Street Productions, i.e. Marvel, and Epic Games, and there are some unknown does as well, which could potentially also be people that received licenses or entities. Sony rendered itself jointly and severally liable with every licensee. And what we mean by joint and several is if you think someone might have a joint bank account and there may be a debt on that bank account and the bank may want to recover the debt, if the debt is joint and several, then they can choose to pursue both parties who are named on that account or just one of them, and then that one can then go and sue for a share from the other person themselves if they wish. But joint and several gives Darren Henson a choice. He may go to just Sony for all of this, but I don't think he's going to, because he has named Richmond Street Productions and he has named Epic Games and he is naming other people too, individuals, and there are still does that could yet be named. So I don't believe he is going to pursue just Sony. But Sony is simultaneously the primary infringer, the deepest pocket, and the most culpable actor in the claim. Sony's conduct appears willful, in my opinion. Yes, I said it. Sony knew of Henson's ownership claim by 2024, but continued licensing, failed to produce documentation, refused to stipulate to amendment, and insisted on dismissal or refiling in New York. Now, each of these acts supports a finding of willfulness. They also all went to mediation in May, and that is clearly not, that has fallen apart. That was Sony's opportunity to say, yes, we can't find a work for hire agreement, and yes, it is widely accepted that you were the choreographer of this dance. You have to remember that in this film, Darren Henson didn't even get so much as a credit. He got nothing. And the whole point of Dance Pool is to do that dance. I'd say the music is incidental. It was the dance. If we look at because I found a different quote from that Johnny Likens. It's not the same one that Darren Henson put in his complaint. I'm just going to go over to it, actually, if I can find it. Ah, what have I got in front of me? Okay, so if I add this to stage, remove that, add this. Right, so this is Johnny Lycan's quote. This is a longer, more detailed one. And he specifically claims that he pitched this idea. Now, there is another Instagram post where Blake Lively actually claims credit for pitching the idea, but you know, we're going to go with Johnny Likens. If I can, I don't know if I can. There we go. I felt strongly that if Deadpool consciously knows that he is in this fight scene that is being cut to bye bye bye, he might just feel inclined to bust out some of the iconic NSYNC dance moves while killing off the bad guys. And then, just want to go one further, to try and sell this idea to the filmmakers, I taught myself how to do the bye 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 choreography via YouTube videos, obviously not Darren's dance grooves, and proceeded to record the moves. So it is all about the dance. That entire opening sequence is about the dance. It is not about the song. So, and I find it absolutely crazy that Darren Henson did not get a credit for that. And I do strongly feel that Sony's conduct in all of this was willful. And then finally, damages are quantifiable and large. So Sony's licensing revenue is substantial, documented and discoverable. It is directly traceable to the allegedly infringing acts. Both actual damages and an account of profits are available and likely significant. So, Sony faces the strongest claim in the entire case. Liability is extremely likely. Damages could be enormous. Right? They could be catastrophic for Sony. And Sony is the primary infringer and the deepest pocket, with exposure that dwarfs every co-defendant. There are 3 infringement theories: direct, contributory, and vicarious, all simultaneously applicable. 2+ years of searching, Sony has failed to locate a work-for-hire agreement despite 2 years of searching. Maximum statutory damages per work for willful infringement under US copyright law is $150,000. Dollars, sorry. Sony Music Entertainment's viable defenses. Now, I've done this with all of the defendants, including ones which are clearly off the table, but as they are a defense, I have, even if they are completely, no, there's no chance we can use this, I've still kind of referenced them. So Sony is not without arguments. However, none of its defenses are clean, and several are wholly unavailable on the facts alleged. So, I've kind of done a ranking assessment from the defense most likely to succeed to those that are effectively dead on arrival. Work for hire. Now, this is potentially strong, but only if Sony can produce a signed contract. It is Sony's only path to a total victory. Implied license, right? There's, I'd say, a moderate chance here. It may reduce damages, though, or undermine willfulness, but it cannot defeat ownership or authorize sublicensing, so it only limits damages, not liability. Lachaise or estoppel. Moderate, 25 years of silence is notable, but copyright claims are not barred by Lachaise within a 3-year limitation period. Okay, so what that basically means is Darren Henson hasn't said anything for 25 years. It took him all this time to actually copyright his work. That may be something that it will be an argument that Sony will put forward and say, well, hold on a minute, he only copyrighted the work himself, in 2025. And that is a fair argument for them to make. However, I still don't think that's going to be enough. It's about as strong as what they've possibly got from, you know, the potential. But it's not going to be enough because it's been recognized. Darren Henson hasn't really, I mean, he has, in my opinion, he has made claim to the work by doing a dance video, teaching the dance, you know, by winning an award. And he, if you look at his Instagram and things, he's got, and you know, stuff that's dedicated to this dance. I don't think, you know, I don't know. I'm not convinced that this would help. I can see it being an argument they put forward, but I can think up, you know, very strong counter arguments that would just destroy it. Because at the end of the day, you know, as soon as the film came out, when he realised the dance was being used, he put them on notice. Hold on, that's my dance, and they have had 2 years to find a work for hire contract, which they haven't found. He has, you know, in the meantime, he has got the copyright. It's accepted that the dance is his. Even the dancer in the movie credited him on his Instagram account when he performed, like, was it his audition tape? And he posted it to Instagram. He did credit Darren Henson as the choreographer. And I think if you'd asked a generation, you know, from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, hey, where did that dance come from? We all knew where the dance come from. So I don't think Lachey's is going to work. Statute limitations is not going to work. I've got it down as weak. Each infringing act, though, was within the last 3 years, is independently actionable under Petrella. So there is a 3-year statute of limitations for Henson to bring a claim for each infringing act, and he has done so. We are within 2 years, actually, of the film. Yeah. The film was released in July, so we're at the 2-year mark. And then there are 2 others, which are fair use and de minimis. Now, de minimis means it's just too trivial, or, you know, it's so minor, it doesn't really merit consideration, especially in law. So that's basically what that means. It serves as a defense, a de minimis defense. But I don't think that this is minor or trivial, nor do I think that, you know, that this is open to fair use either. So I put that down as dead on arrival. Inapplicable to commercial licensing, because they've commercialized the licensing here. They're making a lot of money. So no, it's not fair use. No, it's not trivial. Inapplicable to commercial licensing, reproduction, and global distribution of an entire choreographic work. So I go through a little bit. Defense A, work for hire, Sony's only path to total victory. So if Sony finds the signed contract with work for hire agreement, which signed assignment of rights, or a contract showing Henson transferred ownership to Zomba, then Sony owns the choreography, every license was valid, and all downstream defendants are shielded, and Henson's entire claim collapses. Not only that, but Henson could face action against him from Sony for anything that he's done in the last 3 years involving the dance. Why this defense is likely to fail? Because Sony has had 2 years to search and cannot locate any such document. Zomba may never have executed one. Industry practice in 1999 was notoriously lax regarding choreography contracts. Without assigned writing, ownership cannot transfer under US Code 17, Section 101. And absence of documentation after 2 years of searching is itself highly probative. So if Sony cannot produce assigned writing at trial, the defense fails completely, and every other exposure multiplies accordingly. So the next defense, implied license, partial, not complete. Sony may contend that Henson created the choreography for NSYNC, permitted its public performance for years without objection, and that industry custom treats promotional choreography as implicitly licensed. Zomba, it may argue, reasonably believed it held rights to the promotional video and its underlying elements. So what this argument may achieve? An implied license agreement could reduce the quantum of damages, so that's the amount of damages, undermine a finding of willfulness, and support certain equitable defences. Courts have occasionally recognised implied licenses where a creator delivers work without objection. What it cannot achieve, though, is it cannot transfer ownership. It cannot authorise sub-licensing to Epic Games or Marvel. It cannot justify global commercial exploitation. It does not defeat the core infringement claim. The defence is partial at best and irrelevant to the question of Sony's authority to license. So the next two defences, laches, estoppel, and limitation. Laches and estoppel. So Sony will point to 25 years of silence. Again, I don't think it's strictly been silence. He has done work, he has used his dance, and he is very much claimed to be the choreographer. NSYNC performed the choreography publicly. Zomba registered the promotional video in 2001 and 2006, and Henson never objected. Estoppel requires proof of detrimental reliance, which is difficult to establish. Crucially, copyright claims are not barred by laches within the 3-year limitation period. Silence does not transfer ownership. Statute of limitations. Sony may argue Henson should have discovered the registrations decades ago. I mean, I think Henson and rightly so, believed that the registrations only applied to the song and the music video, which they do. But I have a feeling that Sony is going to say, well, the music video includes the choreography, and you didn't object at the time. Under the case of Petrella, each infringing act within the last 3 years is independently actionable. The discovery rule applies, and Henson alleges he first learned of commercial exploitation in 2024. This defense is weak and unlikely to limit recovery materially. The next two defenses, fair use and de minimis. Dead on arrival. So, fair use is unavailable. Fair use is a defense rooted in transformative, non-commercial or public interest use. Sony's conduct, which is commercial licensing, reproduction and distribution for profit, fails every factor of the 4-part fair use test. The defense is not viable and should not be expected to feature in Sony's pleadings. And then a de minimis. That's unavailable. So de minimis use requires that copying be so trivial as to fall below the threshold of actionability. Sony licensed the choreography in its entirety, the complete work as performed by NSYNC. There is no credible argument that full reproduction constitutes de minimis use. This defense is dead. Neither fair use nor de minimis use is available to Sony on these facts, and counsel should not expect Sony to advance either argument with any seriousness. So I put a little kind of flow chart to try and just assess the situation, the risk. So liability likelihood is extremely high. No signed work for hire found. 3 infringement theories apply. Then we have damages exposure, catastrophic. Licensing revenue plus statutory damages plus downstream liability. Best defences. So, best defences. Work for hire if the contract exists. Implied license. Laches and estoppel. Innocent infringement for damages reduction. Weak defences. Fair use. De minimis. and statute of limitations. So the overall risk rating, highest of all. Signed work, highest of all signed work. Primary infringer and deepest pocket. So, strength of the case. My summary verdict now. There is no valid chain of title, in my opinion. Sony cannot demonstrate an unbroken chain of title from Henson to Zomba to Sony. Without a signed work for hire agreement, every license issued is legally invalid. Traceable profits. Sony's licensing revenue is documented and discoverable. Both actual damages and an account of profits are available remedies, and the figures are likely substantial. Willfulness established. Sony's post-notice conduct, continued licensing, refusal to produce documentation, and procedural obstruction strongly supports a finding of willful infringement and maximum statutory damages. Joint and several liability. As the source of every downstream license, Sony is jointly and severally liable with each licensee. It is simultaneously the primary infringer and the party best positioned to satisfy any judgment. Alright, so final takeaway. Sony is the central defendant, facing the strongest claim and the highest exposure in this litigation. The legal theory is clean, the evidence trail is documented, and Sony's only genuine escape route depends on a document it has been unable to produce. Sony licensed without authority. They licensed the choreography, which it did not own, the foundational act from which all other liability flows. There's no work for hire agreement. After 2 years of searching, Sony cannot produce the signed writing required by statute to establish ownership. All downstream harm traces back to Sony. Every infringing act by every licensee originates with Sony's allegedly invalid license, making Sony jointly and severally liable across the entire defendant chain. And then willful conduct maximizes damages. Sony's post-notice behavior supports willfulness, unlocking statutory damages of up to $150,000. I put pounds. How British of me. $150,000 per work and sustaining claims for an account of profits. So, Sony's only true escape hatch is a signed work for hire agreement, and if none exists, the exposure is massive, traceable, and ongoing. So there we go. That's my takeaway and my summary of Sony as a defendant in this litigation. I think I will probably do Richmond Street Productions next. Yeah, I'll do that. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comments.